Hey guys, welcome back for another episode of The Suited Shootist. And what I'm going to be talking about today is something that's probably kind of a long time coming. Because unless you followed me from the very beginning, when I was just doing the WordPress blog, before I ever put the channel together, then you don't really know who I am. And unless you're one of my friends or family that's following, in which case, thank you. But if I'm a new face, then at some point, you've probably had the question, who the hell is this guy? And why should I give a damn what he's got to say? And I welcome that question, not just for me, but I think that it is worthwhile to ask that about anybody from whom you're taking any kind of advice. So I figured, sit here with a little bit of bourbon and allow myself to introduce myself. So to give you an idea, I am not somebody with a military or a law enforcement background. Never carried a gun professionally, never worn a uniform, so everything that I've experienced is based around carrying a gun as a private citizen without the color of authority behind it. And I think that obviously that's relevant to a lot of folks, but the other piece of it is the reason that I started this was because I didn't see a lot of that type of demographic really being represented in the content that I was able to find. And so I figured if I was having these experiences, surely somebody else had to be as well. And so it probably bore documenting. So that's a little bit of kind of who I am. Like I said, I'm not some high-speed door kicker or anything like that. I work a white-collar sales job. I live in the suburbs with my wife and my dogs. So kind of not the dynamic operational environment that makes for good marketing. But it is a much more relevant context for a lot of people. Hopefully a majority of the people within my audience. And so that's just kind of the high level of who I am. Now, for the more important part of why should you care what I have to say? And you shouldn't, unless what I'm saying is relevant to you. My experience is based around about, as of the filming of this video in January of 2021, roughly about 250 hours of formal training. And that's everything from combatives to firearms to medical. Cumulatively, right now I've racked up about a little over 250, 260 hours total. Some famous instructors, some infamous instructors, and some kind of regional or local level dudes as well. So about 5 going on 6 years ago at this point is when things really started to gel for me. And when my training kind of took that hard turn into really relevant subject matter expert territory. And so that's the entire reason why I started this channel, was because I felt like this experience was something that, again, I couldn't have been the only one feeling this way. A lot of the folks out there that are putting this type of content out are either ones that carry a gun for a living, or they've been able to dedicate so much of their time and energy to it in the form of it being a second job that their capabilities are at a much higher level than kind of the rest of us normal Earth people. Now here's the thing, is this is not an attempt to excuse or justify mediocrity, because I personally am nowhere near close to being done with my own personal growth and development, and I certainly hope you aren't either. But in the same token, I wanted there to be record of somewhere in the midpoint of the journey, because there's a lot of stuff out there for the folks that are just getting into it and have no clue what they're doing. And then there's a lot of very accomplished, very high-level people, many of whom I'm fortunate enough to be either associates or sometimes friends with, who put out their own information. But there's not a whole lot of that middle ground. And if you're in that middle ground, well, the entry-level stuff isn't really relevant anymore. Not from a standpoint of anybody being past the fundamentals, but just from a standpoint of it doesn't do anything to add to your knowledge base at that point. And the high-level guys are sometimes so far beyond your capability that without kind of a mid-frame of reference, it can be very discouraging. You're like, well, why am I not there yet? Because one thing that I found as a trend with a lot of these folks that are the very accomplished high-level performers in the firearms industry is they really suck at bragging on themselves. So unless you're fortunate enough to have a one-on-one conversation with one of these dudes, you're not going to really get a good frame of reference of the years, sometimes decades, of hard work and investment in time and energy that they've put in to get to that level, to give you that perspective. So I put my content out there not necessarily to serve as a goal to strive for. Although, if you are in the early stages of this whole process, and that's something that encourages you to get better, go for it. But it's really just there to serve as a checkpoint. So that's the entire reason of kind of the why behind the Suited Shootist, as well as just a little bit of insight into who I am. Like I said, I'm not anybody special. I'm not some high-speed secret squirrel. I'm just a regular Joe citizen that happens to carry a gun. But a lot of folks are in my position, and so I think it's useful that we kind of all compare these shared experiences, and that way we can kind of determine some best practices for ourselves, because like I've said in some previous videos, I think sometimes living life gets lost sight of in pursuit of self-defense. It's very easy for it to become this all-encompassing thing. And I think that's kind of defeats the point. So hopefully this was a little bit insightful, and it kind of gives you a little bit of background into who I am. I'm going to go ahead and actually include my CV, a link to my CV down below, so that way you can really get a feel for where I'm coming from. And I'm not going to hold anything back. There are some dudes that I've trained with that get a lot of heat within the training community at large. I've interacted with them personally. I've got nothing bad to say about them. I can certainly understand some of the critique, and I'm not necessarily going to insist that people follow the same training path that I did, because there were some detours that didn't necessarily need to be made, but I definitely think that I'm a better person for each of the experiences that I've had, because I've gotten something usable out of every single one of them. So, like I said, it's one guy's opinion, but it's one guy's opinion that's got a little bit more exposure and perspective than some. So, hopefully that proved to be at least somewhat useful to you. Hope everybody has a great week. Stay safe, and I will catch everybody next week. Stay sharp.